Rome, 66 AD. A wedding ceremony unfolds in the imperial palace. Senators line the marble halls. Incense burns. Musicians play traditional hymns. The emperor himself stands at the altar, smiling. The bride approaches, draped in flame-orange veils, dressed in silk and gold. Jewelry catches the torchlight. The crowd watches in silence. This is not a celebration. This is a crime scene. 6 months ago, the person beneath those veils was a boy named Sporus. He had a body. He had a name. He had a future. Then Emperor Nero saw him. What happened next violates every boundary of human dignity. Sporus was held down on a table. Physicians were summoned. Blades were sharpened. The surgery took hours. The screaming could be heard through the palace walls. When it was over, Sporus was no longer whole. Nero had him castrated, butchered, transformed. Why? Because Nero's wife was dead. And this boy looked like her. So Nero decided to turn him into her. Today, Romans will watch as their emperor marries a mutilated slave and calls him Empress. They'll toast the bride. They'll offer congratulations. They'll smile and nod and pretend this is normal. Because when absolute power meets obsession, there are no limits, no laws, no mercy, only victims. This is the story of Sporus, the boy Nero destroyed to resurrect his dead wife. And it gets worse from here. To understand what Nero did to Sporus, you have to understand what Nero became. He wasn't born a monster. He was made into one. December 15th, 37 AD. A boy enters the world with the name Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus. His father dies when he's 3. His mother, Agrippina the Younger, is exiled by Emperor Caligula, her own brother. Agrippina survives. She always survives. When she returns to Rome, she has one obsession: power. And her son is the key. She's cunning, ruthless, patient. At 33 years old, she seduces and marries Emperor Claudius, her own uncle. Lucius is 13. Overnight, he becomes stepson to the most powerful man on earth. Agrippina doesn't stop there. She convinces Claudius to adopt her son, to name him heir over Claudius's biological son, Britannicus. The boy's name is changed. Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus becomes Nero Claudius Caesar. 3 years later, Claudius is dead. October 13th, 54 AD. The emperor collapses at dinner. Witnesses report he ate mushrooms. Historians report poison. Agrippina's physician was the only one allowed near the body. Nero is 16 years old. He is now emperor of Rome. The first years are almost hopeful. Nero has advisors: Seneca the philosopher, Burrus the military commander. They guide him. His policies are merciful. Taxes are reduced. The Senate is consulted. Citizens call him fair. But Agrippina won't let go. She demands to sit beside him during Senate meetings. She expects control. She raised him for this, and she will not be pushed aside. Nero begins to suffocate. February 55 AD. Britannicus, Claudius's biological son, the last threat to Nero's legitimacy, is 14 years old. He's at a palace banquet. He drinks his wine. Within minutes, he's convulsing on the floor. Dead before the servants can move him. Nero watches, doesn't move, doesn't call for help. He orders the body removed. The feast continues. The official report calls it epilepsy. No one believes it. Everyone stays silent. For years later, Nero decides his mother has to die. Agrippina created him. Now she threatens him. She knows too much, controls too much, breathes too close. March 59 AD. Nero invites her to a festival. He has a gift, a beautiful boat to carry her home across the Bay of Naples. The boat is designed to collapse mid-journey. It does. The ceiling caves in. Planks shatter. Agrippina is thrown into black water. But she swims. She survives. She makes it to shore. Nero hears the news. His mother is alive. He sends soldiers to her villa. They find her in her bedroom. She knows why they've come. According to Suetonius, her final words are a command: Strike here. She points to her womb. Tell him to strike the womb that bore Nero. They stab her to death. Nero orders a public funeral. He weeps. He mourns. Rome pretends to believe him. The killing doesn't stop. 62 AD. His first wife, Octavia, is inconvenient. The people love her. Nero doesn't. He divorces her, exiles her, then has her executed. She's 21 years old. Nero is becoming something else now. The mask is cracking. He doesn't just want to rule, he wants to perform. He sings in public theaters. He races chariots in the Circus Maximus. He forces senators to watch him act on stage for hours. Rome is humiliated, but Rome is terrified. July 64 AD. Fire consumes the city. It burns for 6 days. Entire neighborhoods are ash. Thousands die. Thousands more are homeless. Rumor spreads. Nero played his lyre while Rome burned. Sang about the fall of Troy while his people screamed. The story may be false, but it feels true. That's what matters. Nero needs a scapegoat. He chooses the Christians, a strange, growing sect that worships a crucified criminal. The persecution is theatrical, grotesque. Christians are sewn into animal skins and torn apart by dogs. They're crucified in gardens. They're covered in pitch, tied to stakes, and set on fire. Human torches to light Nero's evening parties. Rome watches. Rome says nothing. By 65 AD, Nero has murdered his mother, his brother, his wife. He's turned executions into entertainment. He's rebuilt half of Rome as his personal palace. The Golden House, sprawling across acres of prime land. He is untouchable. And then his second wife dies. Poppaea Sabina, the most beautiful woman in Rome. The only person Nero seems to love. June 65 AD. They argue. He kicks her. She's pregnant. She dies. Nero loses his mind. And when an emperor loses his mind, someone always pays the price. This time, it's a boy named Sporus. Before Sporus, there was Poppaea. She was born in 30 AD into Roman nobility. Wealth, status, connections. But what made Poppaea legendary wasn't her name, it was her face. Ancient historians describe her as the most beautiful woman of her generation. Poets wrote verses about her. Men destroyed themselves trying to win her attention. She knew exactly what she had, and she knew how to use it. Her first marriage was strategic. Rufrius Crispinus, a Praetorian prefect, military power, political access. They had a son. The marriage served its purpose. Then came her second husband. 58 AD. Marcus Salvius Otho, young, ambitious, handsome, one of Nero's closest friends. They married. For a while it worked, until Nero met her. Otho made a fatal mistake. He brought his wife to the palace. Nero saw Poppaea, and everything changed. The seduction was deliberate, calculated. Nero didn't just want her. He needed her. He obsessed over her. Otho watched his friend take his wife. There was nothing he could do. Within months, Otho was gone. Nero sent him to govern Lusitania, modern-day Portugal, the edge of the known world. Exile disguised as promotion. Otho would never see Rome again. 62 AD. Nero divorces Octavia, his first wife, beloved by the people. 12 days later, he marries Poppaea. Rome is scandalized. The Senate says nothing. Poppaea doesn't just become empress. She becomes the power behind the throne. Her beauty routines are the stuff of legend. And they're documented. 500 donkeys traveled with her wherever she went. Every morning, servants milked them. Poppaea bathed in the warm milk, believing it kept her skin luminous. She applied face masks of bread soaked in milk. She used lead-based cosmetics, ceruse, the white powder that gave noble women their ghostly pale complexion. She covered herself in gold leaf for special occasions. Her bathwater cost more than most Romans earned in a year. But Poppaea wasn't just a pretty face playing dress-up. She had influence, real power. She convinced Nero to execute Octavia. His former wife, exiled and harmless, was still a threat to Poppaea's position. Nero hesitated. Poppaea insisted. Octavia was murdered. Poppaea also intensified Nero's persecution of Christians. She saw them as disruptive, dangerous, useful scapegoats. Nero listened. The burnings increased. January 63 AD. Poppaea gives birth. A daughter, Claudia Augusta. Nero is ecstatic. He adores the child, declares her divine. For months later, the baby is dead. No cause is recorded. Just gone. Nero is devastated. But Poppaea is young. There will be others. 65 AD. She's pregnant again. This time, Nero is certain it's a son. He makes plans, prepares celebrations, commissions statues before the child is even born. He's happier than he's been in years. June 65 AD. Nero spends the afternoon at the chariot races. He stays late. Hours passed when he said he'd return. When he finally comes home, Poppaea is waiting. She's angry, pregnant, uncomfortable, and angry that he prioritized games over her. They argue. Tacitus records what happens next. Nero, enraged, kicks her. Not once. Repeatedly. In the stomach. She's pregnant. She collapses. Within hours, Poppaea Sabina is dead. The baby dies with her. Suetonius suggests it was intentional murder. Cassius Dio confirms the violence. All three major sources agree. Nero killed his wife in a fit of rage. And then, he breaks. Completely. The man who murdered his mother without flinching, who watched his brother convulse from poison, who turned people into human torches. This man cannot handle losing Poppaea. He refuses to cremate her body. Cremation is Roman tradition. Every noble is burned. Their ashes placed in urns. Not Poppaea. Nero has her embalmed. Like Egyptian royalty. Her body is filled with spices, wrapped in silk, sealed in a tomb. The funeral lasts for days. Nero delivers the eulogy himself. He sobs. He wails. He cannot be consoled. Then he does something extraordinary, even by Roman standards. He deifies her. Poppaea Sabina is declared a goddess. Poppaea Sabina Augusta, divine. Temples are commissioned. Priests are assigned. Romans are expected to offer sacrifices to her. Nero builds shrines across the city. Her face appears on coins, though historians debate if any survive today. But monuments aren't enough. Grief becomes obsession. Obsession becomes delusion. Nero starts talking to Poppaea, in public, as if she's still alive. Servants are instructed to set her place at dinner, to prepare her chambers each night. The palace pretends. What else can they do? Months pass. Nero's advisors hope time will heal him. It doesn't. He can't accept that she's gone. He won't accept it. So he decides to bring her back. Not through prayer. Not through memory. Through flesh. Nero begins searching. For anyone who looks like Poppaea. He finds a freedwoman. Also named Sabina. She resembles Poppaea. Close enough, maybe. He tries. It fails. The voice is wrong. The mannerisms don't match. She's not Poppaea. The woman disappears from the historical record. No one knows what happened to her. Nero's delusion deepens. And then, someone brings him a boy. A slave. Maybe a freedman. Young. Greek probably. His name is Sporus. And his face. His face looks exactly like Poppaea's. Nero stares at him. Studies him. Sees his dead wife in this child's features. There's just one problem. Sporus is male. For most men, this would end the fantasy. Nero is not most men. He is Emperor of Rome. He has unlimited power, unlimited resources, physicians at his command. If Sporus is male, Nero will fix that. He summons his doctors. He gives the order, and Sporus's nightmare begins. Months pass after Poppaea's death. Nero cannot function, cannot rule, cannot sleep. He wanders the palace at night, calling her name. Servants hear him talking to empty rooms, asking Poppaea questions, waiting for answers that never come. His advisors are desperate. This isn't grief anymore. This is madness. And madness in an emperor is dangerous for everyone. Someone suggests a solution. Find a replacement. Someone who looks like her. Maybe that will satisfy him. They find a freedwoman. Her name is also Sabina, a common name, but the coincidence feels significant. She has Poppaea's coloring. Similar features. The right height. Nero meets her. For a moment there's hope. He stares at her, touches her face, asks her to speak. She does. The voice is wrong. She moves differently, laughs differently. Her mannerisms are all wrong. She's not Poppaea. Nero dismisses her. The woman named Sabina vanishes from every historical record after this moment. No one knows what happened to her, whether she lived, whether Nero let her live. The experiment fails, but it plants an idea. If one person doesn't work, find another, and another, until someone fits. Palace staff are now living in terror. Nero's delusion isn't fading. It's getting worse. They're instructed to speak about Poppaea as if she's still alive, to set her place at dinner, to maintain her wardrobe, to prepare her rooms each evening. Anyone who suggests she's dead is punished. Sculptors are commissioned to create new portraits of Poppaea. But Nero isn't satisfied with marble anymore. He orders them to sculpt the faces of living women. Potential substitutes, to see if any match Poppaea's features closely enough. None do. The palace becomes a museum of obsession. Statues, paintings, empty chairs at banquets, conversations with ghosts. Rome watches their emperor lose his grip on reality. And no one can stop him. 66 AD. Nearly a year after Poppaea's death. Someone, a servant, a courtier, a slave trader, the sources don't agree, brings a young person to the palace. A boy. His name is Sporus. The name is Greek. It means seed or sowing. A common slave name, unremarkable, which tells us something important. Sporus isn't nobility. He's property. The sources conflict on his exact status. Some call him a freedman. Others say slave. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Someone with minimal freedom, no family, no protection. His age is estimated at 13 to 16 years old. A child by our standards. An adult by Roman law. Sporus has no idea why he's been brought to the emperor. No idea what's about to happen. Nero sees him and stops breathing. The resemblance is uncanny. Facial structure almost identical. Hair color the same auburn shade Poppaea had. Build, slender, delicate, the same proportions. It's not perfect, but it's closer than anything Nero has seen. He stares at Sporus for a long time, circles him, studies every angle. The boy stands there, terrified, silent. Nero makes his decision. There's just one problem. Sporus is male, postpubescent. His voice has dropped. His body is developing in ways that will never match Poppaea's. For any rational person, this would end the fantasy. But Nero hasn't been rational for months. He sees a solution, a surgical one. If Sporus is male, Nero will change that. He summons his court physician, a man named Pythagoras. Not the mathematician, a different Pythagoras. A man who understands anatomy, who knows how to cut flesh. Nero explains what he wants. Pythagoras understands immediately. The procedure is possible. Romans have been castrating slaves for generations. Eunuchs serve in wealthy households. Castrati sing in temples. The Greeks perfected the technique centuries ago. It's brutal, dangerous. The survival rate is decent if done properly. But it's possible. Nero asks how long recovery will take. Whether the physical changes will be sufficient. Whether Sporus will be able to pass as female. Pythagoras answers each question. Nero nods. The decision is made. No one asks Sporus. No one asks if he consents. If he understands. If he wants this. Under Roman law, Sporus has no rights. Slaves and freedmen are property. Their bodies belong to their masters. Consent is not a concept that applies. Sporus is 13 to 16 years old. He has no family to protect him, no advocate to speak for him, no legal standing to refuse. He is about to be held down on a table and mutilated. because an emperor loved his dead wife too much. And because absolute power means you can destroy anyone who reminds you of what you've lost. Sporus never got to say no, never got to run, never got to be himself again. His story was almost lost forever. Almost. 2,000 years later, most people have never heard his name. The historians who recorded Nero's crimes barely mentioned him. He was a footnote, a curiosity, a victim who didn't matter. But he did matter. If you think victims like Sporus deserve to have their stories told, subscribe to Throne of Lies right now. One click. That's all it takes to make sure Sporus isn't forgotten again. Don't let the algorithm bury him. Subscribe. What happens next takes place in a private chamber of the imperial palace. No public record. No ceremony. Just a room, a table, and physicians who follow orders. Roman castration in the 1st century AD is a known procedure. Documented, practiced, legal. There are 3 methods. The first is crushing, used on very young boys before puberty. The testicles are placed between 2 stones and crushed slowly until they're destroyed. Development stops. The boy remains prepubescent forever. Sporus is too old for this. Puberty has already started. The second method is tying. Tight cords are wrapped around the scrotum, cutting off blood supply. The tissue dies over days. Eventually, it falls off. This takes too long. Nero wants results now. The third method is cutting. Full surgical removal with a blade. Immediate. Irreversible. This is what they choose for Sporus. Roman medical texts written by Celsus and Galen describe the procedure in clinical detail. They wrote instructions for physicians. How to position the victim. Where to cut. How to stop the bleeding. Sporus is brought into the room. There's no anesthesia. Not really. If he's lucky, they give him wine. Lots of it. Maybe opium if the palace has it. Some physicians used hemlock in small doses, enough to numb, not enough to kill. But none of it is enough. He's restrained on a table. Arms held. Legs held. He cannot move. The physician uses a bronze blade. Sharp. Clean. The cuts are made. The screaming is immediate. Removal takes minutes. Minutes that feel like hours. Blood. So much blood. They cauterize the wounds with a hot iron. The smell of burning flesh fills the room. Sporus convulses against the restraints. Some physicians use pitch instead. Boiling tar pressed into the wound to seal it. Either method is agony. Wine is poured over the injuries to prevent infection. It burns. Honey is applied. Herbs are packed into the wounds. Then it's over. Sporus is carried to a bed. Alive. Barely. Now comes the waiting. Recovery takes 6 to 8 weeks. Minimum. The survival rate for young, healthy victims is approximately 60 to 70%. 30 to 40% die. From what? Hemorrhaging. If the cauterization doesn't hold, victims bleed out within hours. Infection is the bigger killer. The wounds are open, exposed. Bacteria is everywhere. Even with wine and honey, even with the best care available, infection is common. If infection sets in, there's nothing they can do. Sporus would develop fever, delirium, sepsis, death within days. But Sporus survives. He survives the bleeding, survives the infection, survives the fever. He's kept in palace chambers, isolated. Servants tend to him, change his dressings, bring him food he can't eat. The pain is constant. Urination is excruciating. The anatomy has been altered. Scar tissue forms. Complications are lifelong. But pain isn't the worst part. The worst part is watching his body change. Hormones regulate everything. Testosterone drives male development. When the testicles are removed, production stops. Within weeks, Sporus notices differences. His voice doesn't deepen further. It stays high, soft, closer to what Nero wants. Facial hair stops growing. His skin becomes softer. Fat redistributes away from muscle toward hips and chest. His body is feminizing. Not because he wants it to, because it has no choice. Muscle mass decreases. He becomes weaker, more delicate. Months pass. Sporus looks in a mirror, if he's allowed one, and doesn't recognize himself. This is what Nero wanted. This is what Nero paid for. Sporus is being transformed into a copy of a dead woman. In Roman society, castration is considered worse than death. For freeborn citizens, it's the ultimate humiliation. The destruction of manhood, of honor, of identity. But Sporus isn't freeborn. He's a slave, or a freedman with no family, no status, no protection. He has no honor to lose, only a body, and now even that's been taken from him. The physical transformation is exactly what Nero envisioned. Sporus now has the voice, the skin, the build that resembles Poppaea. But there's one more thing Nero needs. The wedding. Because turning a boy into a girl isn't enough. Nero wants Rome to watch. Spring, 66 AD. 6 months have passed since the surgery. Sporus has healed. Physically, at least. Psychologically, he will never heal. But that doesn't matter to Nero. The emperor makes an announcement to his court. He's getting married. The room goes silent. Married? To whom? Poppaea is dead. Who could possibly? Then Sporus is brought in. And everyone understands. Shock, disgust, horror. But no one speaks. No one objects. Recent executions are fresh in memory. Senators who question Nero have disappeared. Critics have been silenced. So they smile. They nod. They congratulate the emperor. And they prepare for a wedding. This will not be a quiet affair. Nero wants spectacle, tradition, legitimacy. He wants Rome to witness this. The engagement ceremony comes first. In Roman custom, the bride receives a betrothal ring. Nero places a ring on Sporus's finger. Not just any ring. Poppaea's ring. The same one she wore. Sporus stares at it. Says nothing. Next come the bridal preparations. Sporus is dressed in a stola, the traditional Roman bridal gown. Not a new one. Poppaea's actual wedding dress. The same silk she wore when she married Nero 4 years ago. Servants style Sporus's hair to match Poppaea's wedding portraits. Identical. Deliberate. Then comes the makeup. Lead ceruse, white powder made from lead carbonate. The same toxic cosmetic Poppaea used. It gives the skin a ghostly pale appearance. Fashionable. Deadly. They paint Sporus's face white. His cheeks are rouged. Kohl lines his eyes. He looks in the mirror. Sees Poppaea staring back. Then they bring out her jewelry. Necklaces. Bracelets. Rings. Heavy gold pieces that belong to a dead woman. They drape them on Sporus. Cover him in her identity. By the time they're finished, Sporus is unrecognizable. He is no longer a boy named Sporus. He is Sabina, Poppaea's family name, Nero's dead wife. The wedding day arrives. Sporus is veiled in the flammeum, the traditional flame-orange bridal veil worn by Roman brides. Covers his face. Hides his expression. Maybe that's a mercy. The processional begins. Through the palace. Into the streets of Rome. Senators attend. Officials attend. The Praetorian Guard attends. Not because they want to, because they have to. Citizens line the streets. They've been ordered to witness, to celebrate. They stand in silence. No cheers, no applause, just horrified staring. At the altar, a man named Pythagoras officiates. He's a court companion. Some sources call him a freedman. Others suggest he's Nero's lover. The details don't matter. What matters is this. He's performing a wedding between an emperor and a castrated slave. He plays the role of Pronuba, the traditional matron of honor in Roman weddings. The vows are exchanged. Sporus speaks the lines written for him. His voice is quiet, high-pitched, feminine enough. Nero smiles. He hears Poppaea in that voice. The dowry is announced. In Roman tradition, the bride brings wealth to the marriage. Sporus has nothing. He owns nothing. So Nero gives him a title instead. Augusta, Empress. Sporus is now legally the Empress of Rome. The wedding feast follows. Guests are served elaborate meals. Wine flows. They toast the bride. They call him Lady Sabina. They smile and pretend this is normal. Tacitus, writing years later, records the reaction with bitter sarcasm. Men wished that Nero's father had taken such a wife. Translation: if Nero's father had married a man, maybe Nero would never have been born. Suetonius is more clinical. Nero went through a formal wedding ceremony with Sporus, complete with dowry and bridal veil. Cassius Dio confirms. Sporus was designated Augusta and treated in every respect as Nero's wife. This isn't symbolic. This is legal. Imperial documents now refer to Empress Sabina. Official correspondence. Palace records. Coins may have been minted with Sporus's image, though none survive. Some historians believe palace records suggest it. Guards are instructed to salute Sporus with the honors due an empress. Sporus is trapped in a legal fiction enforced by imperial power. That night the guests leave. The palace grows quiet, and Sporus is brought to Nero's chambers. The historical sources are silent about what happens next. But the implication is clear. This is a wedding night. Nero expects consummation. Sporus has no choice. The next morning, the palace wakes to a new reality. Sporus is now empress. His daily routine is dictated entirely by Nero's delusion. He's woken early, bathed, dressed in Poppaea's clothes, her jewelry, her perfumes. His hair is styled like hers, his face painted like hers. He's required to move like her, speak like her, smile like her. Any deviation is punished. Nero talks to him as if he is Poppaea, not as if he resembles her, as if he is literally her. Do you remember our trip to Greece, my love? Sporus must answer, must play along. Yes, my husband, I remember. Nero smiles, kisses him, believes it. At public events, Sporus sits beside Nero on a throne. Romans address him as Empress. In Senate meetings, Sporus is present, silent, decorative. During banquets, Sporus is paraded before guests. Nero introduces him as Poppaea. Some guests play along. Others look away. No one corrects him. Nero's delusion is now Rome's reality. And Sporus, who was once a boy with a name, an identity, a body that was his own, is gone. Erased. Replaced by a ghost. A dead woman brought back to life through surgery, makeup, and imperial madness. This is his life now, and it's about to get worse. Every morning, Sporus wakes to the same nightmare. Slave attendants enter his chambers before dawn. They avoid eye contact. They pity him. But pity doesn't save anyone in Nero's palace. They bathe him, perfume him, dress him in silk robes that once belonged to a dead woman. His hair is arranged in elaborate styles, the exact styles Poppaea wore. Pins, braids, ornaments. Takes an hour. Then comes the makeup. Lead ceruse foundation, white powder that turns his skin ghostly pale. Rouge for his cheeks, kohl to line his eyes. The same cosmetics that slowly poisoned Poppaea are now applied to Sporus's face. Daily. Then the jewelry. Heavy pieces. Gold necklaces. Emerald bracelets. Rings that cut into his fingers. Not replicas. Poppaea's actual jewelry. By the time they're finished, Sporus looks in the mirror and sees someone else. That's the point. Breakfast is with Nero. Sporus must sit across from the emperor and act like a loving wife. Smile, nod, respond appropriately. Nero talks constantly about his dreams, about his plans, about Poppaea. She visited me last night, Nero says. In my dreams. She told me she's proud of me. Sporus has learned what to say. Yes, my love. I remember. Nero smiles, reaches across the table, touches Sporus's hand. If Sporus hesitates, if his expression falters for even a moment, Nero notices. And there are consequences. After breakfast come the public appearances. Sporus accompanies Nero to Senate meetings. He sits on a throne beside the emperor, Poppaea's throne. Senators address him as Augusta. Your Majesty, Empress. They bow. They seek his approval on matters of state. Not because Sporus has any power, but because Nero expects them to treat him as Poppaea. Sporus sits in silence. nods when appropriate, signs documents if required. His signature, Sabina, not his name, never his name again. In the afternoons there are audiences. Petitioners come to the palace seeking imperial favor. Sporus presides over some of these. Women's matters, mostly. Nero assigns them to his Empress. Sporus listens to requests he cannot grant, makes decisions that mean nothing, plays a role in a theater where the stage never ends. Then there are the public processions. Sporus is paraded through Rome in an imperial litter. The curtains are pulled back so citizens can see their Empress. He waves, smiles. The crowd stares in uncomfortable silence. Everyone knows what Sporus is, what was done to him, but no one speaks of it. At night, there are theatrical performances. Nero's obsession. The emperor performs on stage, singing, acting, playing the lyre for hours. Sporus is required to sit in the front row, to applaud enthusiastically, to weep during emotional scenes, to be the perfect, adoring wife. But the public performances are not the worst part. The worst part happens in private. Nero gives Sporus gifts, Poppaea's belongings, her combs, her mirrors, her personal clothing, items she touched, items she loved. "I want you to have these," Nero says. "They were always yours." Sporus is forced to sleep in Poppaea's former chambers, her bed, her sheets, surrounded by her things. Nero requires him to wear Poppaea's perfumes, specific scents. So when Nero embraces him, he smells her. Sometimes, Nero makes Sporus reenact memories. "Remember when we walked in the gardens?" Nero asks. "Remember what you said to me?" Sporus has no idea what Poppaea said. He wasn't there. He doesn't know. But he has to answer. "I remember, my husband. Tell me what you said." Sporus invents something. Anything. Hopes it's close enough. Sometimes it is. Nero smiles, kisses him, seems satisfied. Other times Nero knows it's wrong. His face changes, hardens. "That's not what you said." The punishment varies. Sometimes it's a beating, sometimes starvation. Sporus is locked in his chambers without food for days. Sometimes isolation. No human contact, no light, just silence and darkness. Until Sporus learns. Until he gets better at playing Poppaea. His former identity is forbidden. The name Sporus cannot be spoken. Anyone who uses it is punished. Any reference to his past, to being male, to having a life before Nero is erased. He has no contact with anyone from before. No friends. No family. No one who remembers who he used to be. And he cannot confide in anyone. Every servant in the palace belongs to Nero. Every guard. Every official. There is no one to help. No one to tell. Sporus is utterly alone. 66 AD, late summer. Nero announces a grand tour of Greece. He's going to compete in the Olympic Games. He's going to perform in theaters across the Greek world. He's going to be celebrated as the artist emperor he believes himself to be. And Sporus is coming with him. Months of travel. City after city. Nero performs. Competes in chariot races. Sings. Acts. He wins every competition. Not because he's the best. Because the judges are terrified. How do you tell an emperor he lost? Greek officials welcome Nero with elaborate ceremonies. They address Sporus as Empress. They bow to him, offer gifts. Sporus stands beside Nero, smiles, plays his role. The tour lasts into 67 AD. Months away from Rome. No escape, no reprieve. Just performance after performance. City after city. And through it all, Sporus's suffering is visible. Ancient historians notice. Cassius Dio writes, "Sporus was treated like a wife in every way." The implication is clear. Every way. Tacitus mentions Sporus briefly. His account implies that everyone knew about the boy's misery. But no one spoke of it openly. To do so would be to question Nero. And questioning Nero was dangerous. Suetonius records public discomfort with the situation. Romans are uneasy, disturbed, but powerless. This goes on for 3 years. Every single day. waking up in Poppaea's bed, wearing her clothes, answering to her name, being touched by Nero, kissed by Nero, used by Nero, living as a ghost, a replacement, a doll that breathes. Sporus has no power, no agency, no hope. He is property, and property doesn't get to choose. But eventually even Nero's reign will end. And when it does, Sporus will discover something worse than being Nero's wife, being passed to the next emperor. For 3 years Sporus lived this nightmare. Every single day. No one helped him. No one could. No one even remembered his real name. Until now. You're remembering him right now. His name was Sporus. He was 13 to 16 years old when Nero took him. He never got to grow up. Never got to live his own life. Never got to be free. But his story survived. Barely. Don't let this story get buried by the algorithm. Subscribe to Throne of Lies. He couldn't save himself. But you can save his memory. Subscribe. March 68 AD. The Roman provinces are in revolt. Galba, governor of Hispania, military veteran, respected senator, is declared emperor by his legions. Other provinces follow. Gaul, Africa, Germania. The message is clear. Nero has lost control. The Senate meets in emergency session. They declare Nero hostis publicus, public enemy of Rome. The punishment for this designation is death. Nero realizes what's coming. His guards are deserting. His allies are fleeing. The palace is emptying. June 9, 68 AD. Nero flees Rome in the middle of the night. He takes a few loyal servants, heads to a villa outside the city. The Senate has ordered his execution. Soldiers are coming. Nero tries to kill himself. He can't. His hand shakes. He's terrified. A freedman named Epaphroditos helps him, guides the blade. Nero's last words, according to Suetonius, Qualis artifex perio. What an artist dies in me. Even in death, he thinks of himself as a performer. He bleeds out on the villa floor. Age 30, emperor for 14 years. The sources are unclear, but it's likely Sporus was there. He was Nero's wife. Where else would he be? Sporus watches the man who destroyed him die. And for one brief moment there's hope. Is it over? Can I be free? The answer comes quickly. No. Within hours, the Praetorian Guard seizes control of the palace. Their prefect, a man named Nymphidius Sabinus, has plans. Nymphidius claims descent from Emperor Caligula. It's probably false. But he's ambitious. He wants the throne. And he needs legitimacy. So he takes Sporus. Nero's Empress is proof of connection to imperial power. A living symbol. If Nymphidius controls Sporus, he controls Nero's legacy. He keeps Sporus in the Empress costume, the jewelry, the makeup, the title. Augusta still applies. Nymphidius plans to marry Sporus himself, to formalize his claim to the throne through Nero's widow. The charade continues. Different master. Same nightmare. But Nymphidius doesn't last long. June 68 AD. Less than 2 weeks after Nero's death, Nymphidius tries to claim the throne. His own troops turn on him. They kill him in his tent. The Praetorian Guard has no loyalty, only self-interest. Sporus survives. Again. But now he's property of Rome itself. Spoils of war. A curiosity. The new emperor arrives. Galba. Age 73. A respected senator, a military general, a man who represents the old republic. He's the opposite of Nero in every way. Galba takes the throne in June 68 AD. He's stern. Disciplined. He wants to restore order after Nero's chaos. He keeps Sporus at court. Not as a wife. Galba has no romantic interest in the boy. He's too old. Too practical. But Sporus remains Augusta. The title stays. The palace accommodation stays. Why? Because Sporus is a symbol. A reminder of Nero's excess. A trophy. Galba parades him occasionally. Shows him to visiting dignitaries. Look what Nero did. Look how mad he was. Sporus lives in the palace under guard. Not free. Not imprisoned. somewhere in between. For 7 months, this continues. Then January 15th, 69 AD. Galba is assassinated in the Roman Forum, stabbed to death by soldiers loyal to a rival. The rival's name is Otho. And here's where Sporus's nightmare takes its cruelest turn. Otho was Poppaea's first husband. Years ago, before Nero, Otho was married to the most beautiful woman in Rome. He loved her, adored her. Then Nero saw her, wanted her, took her. Nero sent Otho into exile, stole his wife, married her himself. Otho spent years in Lusitania, far from Rome, nursing his resentment, his loss, his rage. Now he's emperor, and Nero is dead. Poppaea is dead. But Sporus, who was surgically altered to look like Poppaea, who was dressed as Poppaea, who was called Poppaea, is still alive. Otho sees him, and something breaks in Otho's mind. He doesn't see Sporus. He sees Poppaea, his lost love, his stolen wife, returned to him. Otho takes Sporus immediately, keeps him at court, keeps him in the Empress role. But this is different from Nero. Nero was delusional. He believed Sporus was Poppaea reincarnated. Otho knows the truth. He knows Sporus is a mutilated boy, but he doesn't care. He calls Sporus my Poppaea anyway. He treats him as a reincarnation of his lost love. A substitute, a second chance. The psychological torture multiplies. Otho forces elaborate public displays of affection. He holds Sporus's hand at banquets, kisses him in front of guests, introduces him as the woman I should have kept. He takes Sporus to the theater, to military camps, to Senate meetings. Everywhere Otho goes, Sporus follows. On display, a trophy wife who isn't a wife. Otho uses the pet names Poppaea once heard. Private endearments between husband and wife. Sporus hears them now, from a different man, in a different context. The names meant love once. Now they mean ownership. Otho's reign lasts 3 months. He faces a rival, Vitellius, another general with legions behind him. April 16th, 69 AD. Otho's forces are defeated in battle. Rather than face capture, Otho commits suicide. Stabs himself in the chest. He's 37 years old. 3 emperors have died in 10 months. Nero, Galba, Otho. Sporus has survived them all. But survival isn't the same as living. He's been Nero's wife, Nymphidius's pawn, Galba's curiosity, Otho's ghost of a lost love, passed from hand to hand like furniture, like jewelry, like a possession with no will of its own. And now a 4th emperor is coming. His name is Vitellius, and he has plans for Sporus, plans that are worse than anything that's come before. April 69 AD. A new emperor enters Rome. His name is Vitellius. He's a general, politician, a man who rose through military conquest and political maneuvering. He's also a glutton, a drunkard, cruel not out of passion or madness, but for entertainment. Nero killed because he was delusional. Vitellius kills because he's bored. When he takes the throne, he inherits everything in the imperial palace, including Sporus. Vitellius looks at the boy in Empress robes and laughs. He doesn't see tragedy. He sees a joke, a novelty, a curiosity left over from Nero's madness. What am I supposed to do with this? He asks his advisors. Someone suggests keeping Sporus at court. As a reminder of Nero's excess, Vitellius has a better idea. Entertainment. Rome loves spectacle. The games. Gladiatorial combat. Theatrical performances, blood and drama in equal measure. Vitellius decides Sporus will perform, not as empress, not as wife, as an actor. In the arena, the plan is specific, calculated, designed for maximum humiliation. Vitellius wants Sporus to participate in a mythological reenactment. These are common at the games, staged scenes from famous myths, performed for thousands of spectators. But not just any myth. A rape scene, most likely the rape of Persephone, or the rape of Proserpina. The stories are similar. A goddess abducted, violated, dragged to the underworld. Romans loved these performances. elaborate costumes, dramatic staging. Sometimes real violence mixed with theater. Sporus would be dressed as the goddess, costumed in flowing robes, positioned on stage in the amphitheater. An actor, playing the role of Hades or Pluto, would simulate the assault. In front of thousands, the crowd would watch, cheer, applaud the spectacle. This is what Vitellius plans for Sporus. For years of torture, castration, forced marriage, psychological warfare, being passed between emperors like furniture. But this staged rape before a cheering crowd, this is different. This isn't private horror. This is public degradation. The final destruction, not just of body, not just of identity, of dignity. Sporus learns of the plan from palace servants. They whisper it to him, warn him, they pity him, but they cannot stop it. Vitellius has given the order. Preparations are underway. The performance is scheduled. Sporus will be taken to the Colosseum, dressed, displayed, violated for entertainment. And there is nothing he can do to stop it, except one thing. For 4 years, Sporus has endured the unendurable. He survived the surgery, the castration, the transformation. He survived being called by a dead woman's name, wearing her clothes, sleeping in her bed. He survived Nero's delusions, Nymphidius's ambition, Galba's indifference, Otho's twisted nostalgia. He survived being property, being powerless, being erased. But he cannot survive this. He will not survive this. Sporus makes his decision. Death is the only escape left. Summer or fall, 69 AD. The exact date is unknown. The sources are brief, clinical, almost dismissive. Cassius Dio writes simply, Sporus killed himself. That's it. No details, no explanation, no ceremony. The method is unknown. Poison is most likely. Palace slaves had access. It would be quick, relatively painless. A blade is possible. Sharp objects are common. Quick if done correctly. Some historians speculate he might have jumped from a height. The palace has balconies, courtyards, high walls. The truth is we don't know. All we know is that Sporus chose death over one more humiliation. He was somewhere between his late teens and early 20s. He had been imperial property for 3 to 4 years. From the moment Nero saw him, Sporus's life was no longer his own. And now, finally, he takes it back. The only choice he has left. There is no ceremony, no funeral, no tomb. His body is likely disposed of without record, cremated with other palace dead, or buried in an unmarked grave. No memorial is commissioned, no mourning period observed. The palace moves on. Vitellius moves on. Rome moves on. Sporus is gone. And no one seems to care. Cassius Dio's brief mention is the only epitaph Sporus receives. Sporus died. 3 words. That's all. No grave marker has ever been found. No inscription. No monument. Archaeologists have searched. Historians have looked. Nothing. Sporus was erased from physical history as completely as his identity was erased in life. His name was forbidden. His past was destroyed. His body was mutilated. His dignity was stolen. And when he finally escaped the only way he could, history barely noticed. He was a footnote, a curiosity, a victim who didn't matter. But he did matter. Sporus was a real person, with thoughts, feelings, dreams that were cut short. He never got to grow up, never got to choose his own path, never got to be free. He was 13 to 16 years old when Nero took him. He died in his late teens or early 20s. That's all the time he had. And every single day of those final years was torture. But his story survived. 3 ancient historians, Suetonius, Tacitus, Cassius Dio, independently recorded what happened to him. They didn't elaborate. They didn't sympathize. But they wrote it down. And because they did, we know. We know Sporus existed. We know what was done to him. And we can make sure he's never forgotten again. You might be wondering, is this real? Did this actually happen? Or is it exaggerated? embellished by historians who hated Nero? The answer is clear. This happened. We have three major ancient sources, written independently, decades apart, all confirming the same story. First, Suetonius. He wrote Lives of the 12 Caesars around 121 AD, about 50 years after Sporus's death. Suetonius provides the most detailed account. He describes the wedding ceremony, the bridal veil, the dowry. He confirms the castration explicitly. He records that Sporus was called lady and mistress by the Roman court. Suetonius had access to imperial archives, documents, eyewitness accounts from people who were there. His version is specific, clinical, too detailed to be fiction. Second, Tacitus. He wrote the Annals around 116 AD, roughly the same period as Suetonius but independently. Tacitus is more restrained, more dignified in his prose, but he confirms the key facts. He notes public revulsion at what Nero did. He records Nero's delusion, the belief that Sporus was actually Poppaea. Tacitus doesn't elaborate on the horror. He doesn't need to. The facts speak for themselves. Third, Cassius Dio. He wrote Roman history much later, around 229 AD, more than a century after the others. But Dio had access to sources that no longer exist. Earlier histories, imperial records, oral traditions. He confirms the marriage, the castration, the transfer of Sporus between emperors. He provides details about Sporus's treatment under Otho, how Otho called him Poppaea, how he paraded him publicly, and crucially, Dio records the suicide. He specifies that Sporus killed himself to avoid Vitellius's plan to humiliate him in the arena. Three historians, three independent accounts, all aligned. There are additional mentions. Plutarch references Sporus briefly in his Life of Galba. He confirms Sporus was kept at court during Galba's reign. Aurelius Victor, writing centuries later, mentions Sporus in passing, evidence the story was well known in the Roman historical tradition. Here's what matters. No ancient source disputes this story. Not one. Historians who were sympathetic to Nero don't deny it. Historians who hated Nero don't embellish it beyond what the others report. The historical consensus is solid. This happened. Modern historians have analyzed the account extensively. The story is entirely consistent with Nero's documented behavior. His murders, his theatrical obsessions, his inability to accept loss. It fits the pattern of Roman imperial excess. Castration of slaves is well documented in Roman society. It wasn't rare. It wasn't illegal. Medical texts from the era describe the procedures in detail. Physicians knew how to do it. Survival rates, recovery times. The legal framework existed for everything described in Sporus's story. Slaves had no bodily autonomy. Masters could do whatever they wanted. Castration, branding, mutilation. Roman law protected property rights, not human rights. There's archaeological context too. Palace remains from Nero's reign show the opulence described in the sources. The golden house, the elaborate courtyards, the wealth. Medical instruments from the 1st century AD have been found. Bronze blades, cauterization tools, everything needed for castration procedures. Legal documents confirm that slaves could be legally married to free citizens, though the marriages had no legal standing. It was theater, performance. Imperial coins from Nero's reign show Poppaea's image. Some are inscribed Diva Poppaea Augusta, Divine Poppaea, proof that Nero deified her after death. The historical record supports every detail. So why does this story matter to historians? Because it illustrates the absolute nature of imperial power. Nero didn't just kill people who opposed him. He reshaped reality itself. He turned a boy into a woman. He married a corpse's ghost. He forced Rome to participate in his delusion. And Rome complied, because there was no alternative. The story also documents Roman attitudes toward bodily autonomy, gender, and slavery. Sporus's body wasn't his own. His gender could be surgically altered without consent. His identity could be erased and replaced. This wasn't seen as extraordinary. It was legal, accepted, possible. That tells us something chilling about Roman society. Finally, this story preserves victim testimony, however filtered through elite male historians. Most slaves are nameless in history. Their suffering is invisible. Their stories are lost. But Sporus's story survived. Not because he was important, not because anyone cared about him, but because what Nero did was shocking even by Roman standards. The historians recorded it as evidence of Nero's madness. But in doing so, they accidentally preserved Sporus. His name, his suffering, his death. 2,000 years later, we can still say, Sporus existed, and what happened to him was real. Sporus is one name among thousands we'll never know. How many others did Nero destroy? How many slaves suffered in his palace? How many bodies were broken for his entertainment? History doesn't record slaves. Their names aren't written in marble. Their graves aren't marked. They're invisible. Sporus's story only survived because it was extreme. Because even Romans, who accepted slavery, who watched gladiators die for sport, who conquered nations without mercy, even they were shocked. But for every Sporus whose name we know, there are thousands we don't. This isn't just about Nero. This is about a system, pattern, a culture of absolute power. Caligula turned senators' wives into prostitutes, forced families to watch their children executed, declared himself a god and demanded worship. Commodus fought as a gladiator in the arena, forced senators to watch him kill animals and condemned prisoners for entertainment. Elagabalus conducted gender experiments on slaves, forced boys into feminine roles, married and divorced multiple times in bizarre ceremonies. Emperors treated human beings as art supplies, raw materials for their fantasies. Sporus was a brushstroke in Nero's painting of delusion. That's all. And most victims didn't even get that much recognition. Most were erased completely. No record, no mention, no memory. But every single one of them was a real person. They had childhoods before slavery, families, friends, moments of happiness before everything was taken. They had dreams before castration, before brutality, before being reduced to property. They had identities before forced transformation, before being renamed, reshaped, erased. Sporus never got justice. He never got freedom. He barely got a footnote in history, but his story endured. Somehow, through 3 ancient historians who recorded it not because they cared about him, but because they wanted to document Nero's madness. In doing so, they accidentally gave Sporus something Nero tried to take away. A voice. 2,000 years later, we know his name. We know what happened to him. We know he existed. And that matters. Because abuse of power hasn't ended. The forms have changed. The methods have evolved. But the pattern remains. People in power still destroy those without it. Still erase identities. Still treat human beings as disposable. The responsibility to remember isn't just about the past. It's about the present, the future. If we forget what happened to Sporus, if we let his story disappear, we make it easier for history to repeat. But if we remember, if we speak his name, if we refuse to let him be erased, then maybe, just maybe, we make the world a little harder for the next tyrant. Sporus deserved better. He deserved to grow up, to choose his own path, to live free. He didn't get that, but we can give him this memory. His name was Sporus. He was a child when Nero took him. A victim who never had a chance. And now, 2,000 years later, you know his story. Don't let him disappear again. You've just spent time learning Sporus's name. That matters. But here's the truth. If you leave now without subscribing, the algorithm will bury this video. Sporus will disappear again. For another 2,000 years. And he won't be the only one. Throne of Lies exists to stop that from happening. To every victim, every story, every person the powerful tried to erase. Subscribe right now. Not for me, for Sporus. For every person whose suffering was supposed to be forgotten. For the slaves who had no names. The victims who had no graves. The stories that almost died in the dark. One click. That's all it takes. Don't let him be erased again. Let's make sure their stories never die.